What does Marcellus Wallace look like?
I am pretty open about my faith on this channel, and while I don't want to be obnoxious, I also am not ashamed of what I think is obviously the most important thing on earth. So here comes the preachiest thing I've ever said while not at a pulpit. Pulp Fiction is the most Christian movie I've ever seen. A hearty disclaimer here. This movie is chock full of vulgar language and its characters are thoroughly evil. Many of my Christian friends will be repulsed from the get-go by the horror and violence and depravity. But our own holy book is full of depravity and violence and horror. And a little of that violence is occasionally darkly comic. Think about Ehud in the Book of Judges, or the brothers of Dinah in Genesis, or even Jael putting a stake through her enemy's head. It meets these things head on. This is an ugly world we live in, but it's a beautiful one too because of all the other stuff.
Yeah, but bacon tastes good. Pork chops taste good.
Let's start with a couple definitions. In the USA, at least, Christianity has become a cultural movement emphasizing purity, and that's not a bad thing. It was started by our nonconformist ancestors who moved to this continent because they were sick of the institutionalized religion and the calcification that came with it. But being humans, they quickly built up the same calcified structures here, just with less funny hats, or at least hats that weren't as funny at the time, but now feature prominently in junior high reenactments. But looking at the Bible, you've got the story of a mostly homeless man who tries to convince his compatriots that legalism is bad, internal purity matters far more than public recognition, and forgiveness can be turned up to 11.
Basically, I'm just gonna walk the earth. What you mean, walk the earth? So you decided to be a bum? Just like all those shit out there who beg for change, who sleep in garbage bins, eat what I throw away. They got a name for that, Jules. It's called a bum.
I'm not saying that Jesus was working out things Willem Dafoe style mid-sermon, but I will say that Jesus of Nazareth was butting heads with the establishment on a daily basis, and that was probably pretty frustrating. So back to Pulp Fiction. Its famously disjointed structure gives the stories of three criminals, Jules, Vincent, and Butch. Jules begins and ends our story, so I'll get to him in a second. Vincent is a hipster, tasked with entertaining his boss's wife, and that goes horribly wrong, since Vincent spends a lot of his money on good drugs and his boss's wife is kind of a moron. Vince is a very entertaining character, but he dies because of a Pop-Tart. Butch is the everyman. He hates his boss, he hates the hand he's been dealt in life.
Say it.
In the fifth, my goes down.
He loves his girlfriend and is scheming for them to escape to the South Pacific with the money that he's extorted. And he ends up getting stuck because of dumb attachments to this material world. He wants his father's watch, and because of that, he kills Vincent, who was sent to kill him. He nearly kills his boss, Marcellus. But then, when Butch and Marcellus are captured by some guys with perverse hearts, Butch stops in his tracks. Butch realizes he must save Marcellus if he's ever going to look himself in the mirror again. There's a very funny sequence which follows the history of violence in films. Do I take the hammer, the baseball bat, chainsaw, katana? And then Butch redeems his life by freeing a man who wants him dead. Butch is dumb. He has no real comprehension of life or its consequences. He doesn't even know what his name means.
Butch.
Butch. What does it mean?
I'm an American, honey. Our names don't mean shit.
But when it comes down to the clutch, Butch decides to do the right thing and dive into the abyss to save Marcellus Wallace. Jules, however, is the saint. He's a hard-boiled killer. The first time I ever saw this film, his monologue preceding Brett's murder terrified me.
When we got into this thing with the best intentions, really. I never...
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I break your concentration?
So, as the final act of the movie pushes forward, and Jules begins to realize that his life has been spared by a higher power, a whole new narrative unfolds. Jules and Vincent are spared from being killed by not Jerry Seinfeld, and Jules reacts in furious anger at Vincent's earthbound refusal to see any kind of a heavenly plan in what's just happened.
This was divine intervention. You know what divine intervention is?
I think so. That means that God came down from heaven and stopped the bullets?
That's right. That's exactly what it means.
Jules defies earthly common sense, and he wants to argue theology with Vincent rather than flee from the police. Vince continues to make the situation worse by covering their car in the blood of their ally, and Jules, in what's almost a moment of prayer, calls in their guardian angel, Winston Wolfe.
I'm Winston Wolfe. I solve problems.
Good, we got one.
Now don't get me wrong, all of these are fallen evil men, including Winston the Wolf and Marcellus, who's proven to have far from godlike powers in an earlier scene. Where Jules changes during the morning's humiliating adventures is where he places his faith. He has trusted in Marcellus Wallace, and Marcellus has always come through. Jules is tempted to indulge in the world's riches, the glories of Amsterdam, for example.
Oh, man, I'm going. That's all there is to it. I'm going.
No, baby, you think it the most.
But quickly he sees that Vincent's earthbound ways will get him nowhere, so he opts to go the route of Jesus and Elijah.
Basically, I'm just gonna walk the earth. You know, like Cain in Kung Fu.
He honors his earthly obligations, turning Marcellus's briefcase back in, but then he turns his back on the life. The briefcase inspired a lot of talk in the pre-internet year that this movie came out. It's an enigmatic MacGuffin whose contents are left unspecified, obviously tied to the car trunks in Heavy Metal or Repo Man, and maybe even to the Ark of the Covenant from Raiders of the Lost Ark. Whatever is in there glows. It's unlocked with the number of the beast, which implies it ain't good. People have theorized it contains Marcellus Wallace's soul, or an Oscar.
We happy?
Yeah, we happy.
But I think that's just fun overthinking. Tarantino probably has no idea. What matters is how the two gangsters deal with the briefcase. Vincent looks straight into its satanic contents and is amazed. Jules refuses to do the same and uses the briefcase instead to hypnotize the robber Ringo.
Is that what I think it is?
Mm-hmm.
It's beautiful.
What is it?
As a result, Jules walks out of the diner alive. He's poorer, but richer. The key to the film is, of course, the fictitious Ezekiel 25:17, a pastiche of the actual biblical book of Ezekiel.
The path of the righteous man is beset on all sides by the inequities of the selfish and the tyranny of evil men. Blessed is he who in the name of charity and goodwill shepherds the weak through the valley of darkness, for he is truly his brother's keeper and the finder of lost children. And I will strike down upon thee with great vengeance and furious anger those who attempt to poison and destroy my brothers. And you will know I am the Lord when I lay my vengeance upon you.
It kills me that Tarantino did not actually use a real Bible verse for this. It undermines his whole plan of a person finally putting together why a text matters in a movie that's all about text. So Tarantino, I love you, man, but that was a misstep. But anyhow, Ezekiel 25:17. I've never killed someone, but I also know that I've done plenty of bad things. We need to struggle like Jules Winfield to be the shepherd. Jules' journey is his recognition, long overdue, that he is not the vengeance of the Lord. He's the person who needs to be charity, and he needs to be goodwill for the weak. What gets him there? Maybe witnessing Vincent being hard-headed and hard-hearted. Maybe having his bacon saved by the wolf, but I don't think so. Jules seems to come away from the Bonnie situation with a mere realization that the wolf was cool.
Was he cool or what?
Thank you.
Maybe the simple act of God that saved his life when he truly didn't deserve it is the answer.
I'd like that. But that ain't the truth.
I think the thing that saves Jules is him witnessing Ringo and Honey Bunny, a couple of morons starting on the path that he himself has trod.
Come on, point the gun at me! Point the gun at me! There you go.
They could pretend to be three Fonzies like the wolf, but that only saves you for a couple of minutes. What saves Jules is his recognition that he is the greater evil.
You're the weak, and I'm the tyranny of evil men. But I'm trying, Ringo. I'm trying real hard to be the shepherd.
And the evil men can provide cover briefly on Earth, like Marcellus, but they can't offer freedom. Jules is the only one in this movie who really hears the voice of God. And regardless of Tarantino's personal beliefs, and I do think that Tarantino has a hankering for redemption, we see that in Mr. Orange, or Jackie Brown and Max Cherry, or Dr. King Schultz, or Rick Dalton and Cliff Booth, as well as a thirst for righteousness seen just about everywhere. But Jules is the one character who hears and listens. What happens next? Vince walks into a death trap set up by Marcellus's bad judgment. Butch escapes, but probably not for long on Zed's chopper. And Jules walks out of the life, and hopefully into new and everlasting life. Praise God, from whom all blessings flow.